Hey everyone, this is Alex USA Days, and we continue our journey with Playwright QA automation. So today we're going to talk about setting page and using hooks. We are in module 8 and we're getting closer to the page object model and to the end of the actual Playwright course. So setting page and using hooks. In Playwright, the built-in page that we were using for tests is a fixture. Fixtures automatically set up and tear down resources needed for tests. So built-in page provides a fresh page tab in a specific browser within a browser context for each test. It ensures that each test runs in isolation. However, sometimes you may need to set up the browser in context yourself to customize the configuration or manage multiple contexts. You can do this manually and organize the process using hooks such as before all, after all, before each, and after each. Before all hook is used to execute code before any test in the test suite run. After all hook is used to execute code after all tests in the test suite have finished. Before each hook is used to execute code before each individual test run. And after each hook is used to execute code after each individual test has finished. Hooks can be used for many things, like initializing and clean up test data before and after tests, or perform login operations and store session tokens or cookies. In this lesson, we will look into using hooks specifically for manual page setup and tear down. So let's get into the code. Okay, so here we are in the code. Before we start, I want to note that I updated config a little bit. It will be different from the previous video. So I turned off the parallel. Fully parallel instead of true is now false because I don't want to run tests in parallel. We will run tests one by one so you can see the execution process. I also put only one worker to run the test, so not multiple workers, just one worker running one page at a time. And headless instead of true I set to false so we can actually see the execution happening. And for the projects, I commented out Firefox. We will be running tests only in Chrome for this particular example. Okay, so let's go to the tests folder and let's create a file. Here, new file. Let's call it hooks and page.spec.js. Okay, so here we will create a couple tests, but now we will not be using built-in page. We will be actually setting up our own page. And for testing, we're going to go to the Heroku app.internet. So the page that we will be using is this one, the internet herokuapp.com. So we've already worked on this page. So here for this page, we'll create our tests. So the very first thing that we need to do is import. And let's import test and expect. So we're going to do some assertions. So we're importing expect and test from, and we're importing it from Playwright test module. All right. Now, there will be one new line and during import, and now we need to import a browser because we're now no longer going to be using config, we will be using setup browser ourselves. So we need to actually import the browser. So we're going to import Chromium, and the Chromium is not going to be imported from Playwright test, but from another module called Playwright. Okay. So once we imported the test in Chromium, now we need to set up variables where we're going to store our browser instance, our browser context, and our browser page. So it goes like this. First, you open a browser, right? Now, for that browser, you have to have specific context, so settings, right, for that browser, essentially. And then each context can have a page or a tab, like multiple tabs, right? So page. So the setup, for the setup, we will need three variables. So we'll need let browser. You don't want to give const because you can't have const without value assigned. You want to have let And within the browser, we will be storing browser instance on each test execution. So this have to be able to store different assign different values, right? So same thing for the context. Let context. So they right now they're just empty. They exist, but there's no any values in there. Okay, so the first thing that we can do is just launch the browser. And the browser going to be launched before execution of everything. So before the whole set of tests, before the test suite. So for that, we can use test dot before all. So before anything runs, we want to make sure we have a browser running, right? So we're going to say async. So still asynchronous, nothing changes here. Arrow function, and within here we want to launch browser, right? And we're going to launch Chromium. Launch Chrome browser before all tests, right? So here now we're going to be assigning the value to this variable. You see now it's highlighted, right? So browser is equal await Chromium dot launch like this. Okay, so that's it, and we can maybe have a console here output console log before all hook launched Chromium browser, something like that. So we can see this actually happening here. Okay, so what else? So next hook that we can use is called before each. So test before each. Now before each will do some action before every test run, right? So we can say async, again arrow function here, and what do we need to do? Well, we have a browser, and that's just a browser, but there are no settings. Right now we need to create context for the browser. So first thing, we need to create context, and then context can be different for each test, right? That's why we're running it before each test. So create context for a browser, essentially like settings, right? So context equals, and we need to say await browser dot new context. Now, this browser that we set in new context is here. So first we launched Chrome, stored it in variable browser, and now we're using this browser variable to set up context or settings for it, right? And now after that, we need to create new page, or essentially open a browser tab with all the settings that we provided in the context. And that will be page equal, and then again we're doing await. Now we're using context that we assigned here, right? So this guy right here. So await context dot new page. So this page right here is our manually created page that we will be using for testing. Before, if we take a look at the login, we were using this page, right? This page was coming directly from Playwright test, and this page is a fixture. So all of the setup, the browser setup, everything was happening behind the scenes. Now we're doing it manually. Okay. What else can we add in before each test, before each run? So we usually go and navigate to this page, right? And we place the navigation within test itself, like here. But if I'll have multiple tests, I can skip a line and I can say, well, before each test, actually go to this particular page, right? So I don't have to rewrite it every time. So let's grab, I'm going to just copy and paste this from login, going back into the hooks and page. And here, let's add navigate to test URL, right? And then just paste the value here. Not going to be going into login. I'm just going to be going to the home page over here, essentially, right? And I want to add a pause before the execution happens, so you can see what are we doing, right? So pause execution. So we have a pop-up test runner that we can step through. So await page dot pause. Okay, so this is setting things up. Now, how can we tier things down, right? And you have to tier things down, otherwise you will have multiple browsers running, multiple windows open. You have to manage this now manually because page, the fixture page that we used before, was doing it for you. Also, let's have a console log output here somewhere, just to know that we are running before each hook right here, so we can visually see before each hook launched new page, right? Okay, perfect. So we need to manage closing browsers and pages. So page we probably want to close, and a tab needs to be closed after each test run. So we can say test after each, and same thing. Let's do async arrow function here, right? And just to close the page, it's pretty simple. So close, first you want to close page, and then you want to close settings context for it. So close page and context. You want to do await page dot close, just like that. The next one is await context dot close. So after the execution of a test is completed, it will go ahead and close the tab, the browser tab, right? Not the browser itself. Now, once we're done with all of the tests that we're running, now we can close the browser that we opened here, right? Also, let's add another console message. So here we're going to say after each closed, after each hook closed page, right? Okay, next one is after all. So here we're going to be closing the actual browser. So async arrow function, and after all, same thing, just close browser. I'm going to add a comment, close browser, await browser dot close, right? So we're telling this browser right here, we're using this variable, was the browser, and we're saying, hey, close it. We're done here. Okay, so this is our setup. That's perfect. So let's do some tests here. So first, let's take a look. So here is A/B testing. So I want to click on A/B testing over here, and then I want to verify that there is this text within the header. Let's inspect it. Right here. Click on it. So this is H3, right? H3 tag. So H3 has to have A/B test control within it. Okay. So because we already navigated to the page, we don't really need to add this step. We can just directly start with clicking on this link, A/B testing, to get inside the A/B test page. Okay. So here we're going to start test. Let's name this A/B test. This is the name for the test run. So async. Now we don't have to. Now we don't have to pass along the page over here because we will be using page that's stored right here. Before, you can see we had to pass the page, the fixture, inside, and we were using it within. Now we don't have to pass it inside because we use the page that we stored here at the top in the variable, right? So A/B test sync, and then first thing we need to click await page dot click, and we want to click on text. We're gonna use it. We're gonna go by text. Text A /B testing, and you want to close double quotes around it. So A/B testing, A/B testing, right? So first we click on it, and then we want to store our h3 tag. So const header equals await page dot text content h3. So the value, we click here, and then the value of the h3 tag is stored, the text value is stored within the header variable. Okay, and here we will do assertion. So expect header to be, and we need just to copy the text that we verified. So A/B test control. Okay, this is good. Let's do test dot only here. So it runs only this test, and do npx playwright test, and let's run it. So because I have a pause, and you see, because I have a pause, the execution stops right here. So it already went to the page. I open up Playwright Inspector, and it's already past the step. We're already on the page. So the next step, it goes inside the test. So before all and before each was executed, right? Now I am on the page, and it's clicking on the link. Next step, we're inside of it. It stores the text in the header. And next step, assertion happens. And next step, it goes into after each, so it closes the page. I'm going to press on it, it's going to close the page, it closes the context, and that's it. So there is another dot only to tests. So we want to go to login spec. Okay, I want to remove this dot only. Let me clear this out. Let's run it one more time. So I think the test actually failed. There was a different text. Okay, before all hook launched Chromium browser. Before each launched new page. Okay, next step, click on it, grab the text, close, and close page, close context. That's it. Okay, so it's actually passed. Run test runs. Here's our output from each hook. Good. Now, let's also add a console output for after all, so we can visually see that browser was closed, right? So after all hook close browser. So we'll get the message of actually browser being closed in the console. So this is our test. Our first test was success. Let's create one more. So the next one, let's add. So we go back to the main page. We go to check boxes. and we verify that the first checkbox is not checked. So checkbox 1 is not checked, right? The second one checked by default. The first one is not checked by default. So we're going to do that. So test checkbox verification, async, okay, arrow function. So again, we don't need to navigate to the page. It's already happening with before each hook. So all we really need to do is click, right? So await page dot click, and what are we clicking on? So text, and the text here is for the link is checkboxes, right? So checkboxes in double quotes. So once we clicked on the checkboxes, let's store the first checkbox. So checkbox equals await page so we so let's store if the value is checked, right? And then here we want to pass along the locator for the checkbox. So input okay, and here we want to pass the locator for the checkbox. Checkboxes inspect. So input type checkbox. So we can grab this whole thing. Right. And then we have two input type checkboxes, the first one and the second one. We need only the first one. So for that we can say, so input type checkbox, and type checkbox, you want to place that in square brackets. Here you want to say first child. So if it's the very first child, you can just say the first child here, right? So it will grab this guy. There are different ways how you can grab the first one using nth0 or using first child, so whatever you prefer. Okay, and now we want to verify, so expect checkbox. So here it is saying, is it checked? And because it's not checked, it's going to store false, right? And we want to make sure that it is false, to be false. So I want to make sure when the page is checking, if this element is checked, that the value says false. So it is not checked, right? Clear it out, and let's also... So now I don't have test only. It's going to run everything, but I don't want to run everything. I want to run only the specific file. So npx okay, playwright test, playwright test, and here we're going to say tests / hooks and page.spec.js. So I don't want to run any other files. And let's go. Here is our browser. Here's our inspector. So let's step through it. We're doing A/B test. Clicks on it, grabs the header, closes the tab and the context, and then closes not yet, it's actually not closing the page yet. So here is not closing the browser yet. So here is the new test. Okay, now we click on checkboxes. We grab the first checkbox with our locator. We're looking if it's checked. It is not checked, and we're closing the page and the context. And then after all executes, after the two tests ran through, after all hook is executed and it's actually closed the browser itself, right? Okay, so now we're gonna have a little bit of a more complex test. We're gonna work with setting stuff inside the context and switching context, and you will see why you might need to have a context on your own, because using the context and page, you can have multiple contexts, multiple pages with different settings when you run through your tests. So the next test, we're gonna go into geolocation, and we will actually set a particular location and run the test against that location to make sure it was set correctly. And the setting of the geolocation in Chrome itself, you can go into customize, more tools, sensors, right? And where my sensors are, I'm gonna make the screen larger. Okay, here we are. So you can manually set your location here in Chrome if you want to use different locations, like San Francisco, for example, right? I can add more locations. So I can set location and override it to Mountain View, right? Or to Berlin. So I can do that in Chrome. And you see it comes up with the Berlin location. I can do it in DevTools, but when you do automation, it's hard to go in DevTools and select that. So you can have this set in the context itself. So we will set a particular location for the test in the context, and then we will verify that the geolocation is actually set by clicking where I am, right? Okay, so a little bit more complex, but I think it's manageable. If we go step by step and understand what's going on, we should be able to create the test, right? Okay, so test, and I will do that only first for this one. So we run just geolocation first. Geolocation setting in context and verification. That's the name of the test. Again, we're doing async, right? So first, we need to override the context that was set in before each hook, because this context doesn't have any location settings. So before each hook, said context is equal new browser context, and it's stored here. Now we want to create new context and store it again in this variable, override it, and use it in our test. So for that we can say context, same thing, await, same thing that we were doing, but we're doing it in new, right? New context. But now within the context we want to provide some settings. First, you want to say permissions, permissions, and you're saying I'm allowing the context to change geolocation. So for that, you want to say permissions, geolocations, right? Then on the new line, you're actually typing out what will be the geolocation. So location, and you want to provide now in not in square brackets, but in parentheses, you want to provide latitude, latitude, and you want to provide longitude, right? So what do we want to provide here? Let's go to Chrome, inspect. So get more tools, sensors, and this is where you're gonna see it. So let's select San Francisco. So here's our latitude for San Francisco, the value, right? So latitude, setting it right here, and then longitude right here. So just copying it from the sensors from Chrome. Okay, so geolocation is set. What else can we see here? What other options can we have in the browser? So let's set viewport, which is a resolution, right? So this is a resolution of your of your Chrome page. So width 1280 by height 720. All right, so this is our resolution. So I think, okay, here we're opening the context, setting all those values inside of it, storing it in the variable. All right, perfect. So now with this new context that was set, we can actually create new page. So page, await. This page is, again, overriding the page that was created in before each, right? I have to set the page, but now it will be used in this context, new one, with the settings that we provided. So context dot new page. All right, great. Now because we were navigating here in before each to the page, this will not gonna work in our test. The navigation is never happening for us because we're overriding the context, we're overriding the page. So we'll actually have to add a step here where we go with this page to a particular address, right? So let's go directly to the geolocation link. So right here, that's what we're gonna open. And one thing that is important to add, the pause that we had, again, this pause was for the before each page. We will be opening a new context, a new page here. So we will need another pause to pause the page that we will be using inside of the test. So this page, we're going to pause this page to see the execution. Okay. So we want to await page dot click. And what are we clicking on? Let's inspect this. Button, I think there's only one button on this page. So we can just use the tag to click on it. So await page click, button. And after we click on the button, right? So this is San Francisco that is set right now. We want to grab this value. So ID lat value, so latitude. And we want to grab this value, so ID lon value. Okay, so let's do that. So let's do const lat equals await page dot text content and ID, so with a hash, lat value const longitude, so lon equals await page dot text content and lon value. Okay, we grab that. Now we want to assert what we get back, right? So expect so expect latitude. Actually, we receive and store this as string, as a text value, but we can update this to a float data type instead of a string, and to compare it to a float number. So I'll show you how we can do that. So instead of doing string verification like we normally do, we can say parse float, and then let's pass along the latitude. So it was a string, here it becomes a float. And then we can say, we don't need to have an exact match with a float. We can say to be close to, and here's our latitude. So it has to be close to this number, right? And then again, expect, and now parse float, and then we will now transform our string, our text for longitude value into float, and then we can say to be close to, and we're gonna use this, so longitude value. Okay. All right. Let's give this whole thing a try and see what happens. I don't need to use the file because I have that only, but this is fine. We can still use the whole path to the file for the execution. Okay, so look at what happens. Our before hook, before all hook, just launch a Chromium browser, and then before each launched new page. So before all and before each just did their thing. I think I also want to add a console output here, and I want to say using context and page created within test and not within test and not within hooks. So we have indication when this happens, right? All right, let me cancel it out and run one more time. Okay, so here's our browser page. It's already on the internet, herokuapp.com. So this is happening within this page that was set with before each hook. Now, if I'll move to the next step, something interesting is going to happen. Okay, so there's an error. Geolocation expected number got undefined. Okay, longitude. All right, there's a typo. So longitude. My pronunciation is probably off, like by a long shot. I don't pronounce that correctly. So longitude. All right. I think this is good. Let's clear it out, run one more time. So the name for the setting wasn't correct. Okay, so here we go. Here's our browser page. Set it up in before hooks. And look, I click next step, and all of a sudden I get another tab and another page running and another inspector. We're using the same browser, just a new tab, new context, new page, because we set it up, all the stuff in the test. You see, using context and page created within test and not within hooks. So this is what we're seeing now. Context, new page, this execution, this page pause, that's what triggered it. It is a different page and it didn't go anywhere yet. You see, we're right here, it's paused. The next step, it will go directly to geolocation. So I have two contexts running, right? Okay, so we're here. So next step, it will go to the internetheroclub.com geolocation, right? Open it up. Now it's gonna click on where I am. And according to the where I am, the value for geolocation should be set in the context. So it will grab it from there. Step over to the next step, and we got 37774929 right here, and longitude minus 122 419416. So what we provided. And if I'll go further, so I'm not gonna do assertions. I mean, I can do an assertions. So this is assertions for latitude, longitude. They both are gonna pass. Now, before it goes and closes the page, after each closed page in the context, I want to click on where I am. This button to see if we're in fact right now gonna show San Francisco. So see it in Google. Click on that. Okay, that's where it opened up. Let's zoom out. Look at that. We're in San Francisco. Okay. Let's finish. So it's closing the page and the context. And after all, it closed the browser. When after all hook ran, it closed the browser. When it closes the browser, it closes the both of the context, because both of those contexts exist in Chrome. So the browser is closed was after all hook and everything is closed. If you want after all to close browser, not after each test per se, then you can place the test, the whole block of tests inside. You can place it inside describe block and then open and close the browser after all. We'll do it after the describe block execution. So the whole thing after the describe. Describe block for hooks, right? And then we're gonna grab the test that we have here. So Control X to cut and then paste with Control V. So, okay, right click, format. All right, let's give it a run. I will say headless as true. So I don't want the pauses to trigger. I just want it to run the whole thing. Clear it. Let's run it. Now we're not gonna have the windows. Or actually, it's not gonna work because the settings is not coming from here. Okay, it's coming from here. Hold on. Clear. The config is not going to do much for us because when we do config, this is for the page that comes from the fixture. So headless true, still going to have the browsers coming up in our hooks and pages test. So to have the headless mode, you want to add it to your browser settings that you create here. So launch, and then you can provide settings inside launch. So headless, true. Now if I'll rerun it, I'm not going to have the browsers popping up. So let's move before each and before all inside the describe block itself. So because we're still getting after all who close the browser on each test run, so let's put it within the describe block. Right, so now we have a describe block. Within the describe block, we have several tests, and we have before all and after all within the describe block. So now we're going to see before all hook launch Chromium browser and after all who close the browser at the beginning and at the end after all the tests are run, right? Because now it's within the describe block itself. All right, let's clear it out and let's run it. Yep. Yeah, so that's the way to do it properly if you have before all and after all. So it doesn't happen after each test. It should be within the describe block itself. So you can see before all hook launch Chromium browser, and then after all hook close the browser. So it happens only before the tests and after the tests, not in between. And then here you can see before each and after each inside. All right, perfect. Okay, with that being added, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say git add dot. So I'm gonna add everything I have here. Git commit -m and add a comment, added hooks and pages and location setting, and I will do git push. Okay, so now you're gonna see all this code inside the Playwright repository. So GitHub, Alex Usaday, Playwright for QA automation. So this code, the updated tests, if you want to download it, you can access this repo within the tests. You will have it hooks and pages. So right here. If you don't want to type it out, you just can copy it from this page and file. Okay, so this was Alex USA Days. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it was helpful. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.